Hi there, musitrature recaps here. Today, I'm explaining a war drama movie called Casualties of War. In the movie, American soldiers capture the Vietnamese girl for their amusement and commit horrifying acts. This film, based on actual events, portrays the actions of American soldiers during the Vietnam War in 1966. A team of American scouts is given a mission to locate underground tunnels used by the Viet Cong to move swiftly underground and launch surprise attacks. While hidden in the forest one night, they hear mortar fire. Consulting their map, they realize that a nearby group of soldiers has been discovered by the enemy and is under attack. Lieutenant Riley instructs his troops to pinpoint the enemy's location and relay the coordinates based on the sounds of gunfire. At one point, a soldier opens fire upon spotting a Vietnamese enemy, the shots ringing out clearly. This alerts the enemy to the group's position, leading to mortar fire raining down. Some lose their lives, while others attempt to escape, their priority being to transmit the enemy's coordinates to central headquarters for a counterattack. Young Private First Class Max Erickson, who had been patrolling separately, also seeks refuge. A nearby explosion shakes the ground, causing him to fall into a concealed Viet Cong tunnel, where his legs become trapped. Once air support engages the enemy, fellow soldiers start assessing the situation, aiding the wounded, and taking stock of the manpower losses. While Erickson remains trapped and unaware, an enemy with a knife clenched in their teeth stealthily inches closer through the narrow tunnel. Sergeant Tony Meserve spots the stranded soldier and rescues him from the pit just in the nick of time, preventing the knife-wielding foe from attacking. Meanwhile, a Viet Cong soldier hidden in a tree takes a shot at an American soldier. Using tracer rounds, a fellow soldier identifies the enemy's location, allowing Erickson to make a precise shot with a grenade launcher. Another enemy, armed with a machine gun, emerges from a pit, only for Meserve to swiftly eliminate the threat. The following morning, a group of surviving American soldiers returns to a local village used as temporary shelter. Erickson stands out by showing kindness to the local children, in contrast to his colleagues, who are mistrustful of everyone, regarding all Vietnamese, regardless of age or gender, as potential traitors. Striving to hold on to his humanity, Private Erickson continues to treat the locals with respect and readily offers assistance. Later, Surgeons Brownie and Meserve remind their subordinates of the importance of unwavering obedience to their superiors. With their demobilization approaching, they emphasize the need to set an example by following orders without questioning. However, at that moment, the Viet Cong hiding in the bushes, along with local informants, open fire on the American soldiers, mortally wounding Sergeant Brown. In a lopsided battle, a group of American scouts successfully repels the enemy, forcing them to retreat. Soon after, medical helicopters arrive at the scene to evacuate the wounded soldiers and rush them to the hospital for immediate care. Corporal Clark is deeply frustrated by the current situation, fueled by his long-standing distrust of the locals. He harbors a desire to bring devastation to this entire country, but he knows it's beyond his control. The following day, the American soldiers return to their base, seeking some rest and a chance to clean up. Sergeant Meserve later delivers the somber news to his comrades that Brownie couldn't survive his injuries and has passed away. That evening, they conduct a reconnaissance mission in the area, followed by a demanding march to fulfill their assigned duties the next morning. Meserve, burdened by the loss of a dear colleague and friend, seeks solace in the company of a local girl in the nearest village. In the evening, four soldiers decide to venture outside the military base to explore the surroundings, but their plans are thwarted by a vigilant patrolman who restricts their movement. The area remains off-limits, compelling them to stay within the confines of their location until further orders are issued. Realizing there's no way out, the soldiers return to the barracks and await their morning march. Meanwhile, Sergeant Meserve introduces Private First Class Antonio Diaz to the group as a replacement for the late Brownie. He explains their route and the tasks ahead, revealing that they are departing 2 hours earlier than planned. The reason: they're heading to the neighboring village to abduct a girl, hoping to boost morale and lift spirits. Erickson is taken aback by his superior's shocking and criminal statement, and he discusses it with Clark, believing it's merely a tasteless joke. Under the cover of night, a squad of American soldiers moves forward to carry out their mission. The sergeant leads his team into the village, systematically checking every house for sleeping Vietnamese, in search of a young girl. They locate the young On, and despite pleas and screams from her family, the sergeant and corporal seize her. Panic and chaos ensue in the village, with relatives begging them to spare the girl. The soldiers commit a heinous act against her sister, leaving Erickson stunned and disbelieving, never imagining his comrades were capable of such a war crime. Having kidnapped the village girl for their twisted entertainment, the soldiers proceed with their assigned tasks. Erickson confronts the sergeant, insisting they've committed a crime, but Meserve remains unyielding, ignoring the private's moral objections and sending him on patrol. In contrast, Private Hatcher and Corporal Clark show no qualms, seeing it as a source of entertainment and relaxation. A couple of hours later, the group takes a break to engage with a Vietnamese girl. Clark decides to be the first to approach the captive girl but is interrupted by Hatcher, who notices some movement in the nearby bushes. Thinking it might be someone hiding there, Hatcher fires a shot, only to find it was just a startled animal. Once again, Erickson attempts to have a conversation with Sergeant Meserve to understand why they're doing this and continuing to hold the girl against her will. Meserve falsely claims that she's Viet Cong, even though there's no evidence to support that. From Meserve's talk, it becomes clear that he manipulates the situation and is ready to label anyone who questions or disobeys as a traitor. Furthermore, if Erickson continues to have a conscience about their actions, Meserve might brand him a traitor and be willing to use force. Realizing that the gunshots could potentially give away their position to the enemy, the group decides to move on, postponing any further interaction with the girl. A few hours later, the group stumbles upon an abandoned wooden cabin deep in the woods. While Meserve, Clark, and Hatcher scout the area, On, along with Diaz and Erickson, clean up the cabin. It turns out that Diaz is a decent person and doesn't want to subject the girl to any mistreatment against her will. Recognizing their shared perspective on the situation, the soldiers agree to support one another, ensuring that no one is coerced into committing a crime. Erickson, showing compassion and care, gains On's trust and tends to her injuries. A little later, the group reassembles near the house, and Sergeant Meserve suggests they interrogate the girl with force. He binds the girl's hands and outlines the order in which the soldiers will, well, have their way with her. Erickson vehemently opposes this, leading to a heated conflict within the group. The sergeant is prepared to label Erickson as a traitor because he's the only one against involving the village girl in their amusement. Erickson turns to Diaz, hoping for his support, but at the last moment, Diaz backs down, willing to join the others. Realizing that Erickson will only hinder their plans, Clark decides to send him on patrol. Meanwhile, Meserve decides to be the first to take advantage of the helpless Vietnamese girl. He enters the rundown house, throws On onto a table, and forcefully removes her clothes. The cries, moans, and pleas of the girl fill the air, leaving Erickson appalled by the despicable actions of those he serves with. Meserve continues to exploit On until nightfall, after which he dictates the order for the others to follow suit. Diaz is next in line, and subsequently, the others have their way with the girl. Erickson can't stop it from happening, but he remains true to his principles and humanity by refusing to partake in the cruelty. The following morning, the group leaves Clark behind to watch over the girl and sets out for their investigation. Nearby, they spot a group of armed Vietnamese individuals transporting artillery shells. After reporting the coordinates to their headquarters, they continue to watch and prepare for their task. Two of the soldiers head back to their base to resupply and get some smoke grenades. Clark is reluctant to stay with the girl and instructs Erickson to take his place. Once everyone else has left, the kind-hearted Erickson decides to untie On and allows her to eat and drink. When Clark returns to his post, the sergeant orders them to return because he's concerned that Erickson might make a rash decision. Meserve's concerns are justified because Erickson has decided to let On return to her village. She's afraid to go alone, and Erickson, despite the risk of being charged with desertion, tries to accompany her. Clark intercepts the duo before they can escape, and he forces them to rejoin the group. As he continues to watch over them, the sergeant becomes increasingly nervous about the girl's coughing and orders Erickson to end her life. The private is unwilling to carry out the criminal order, so Diaz takes the knife into his hands. In an attempt to help the girl, Erickson fires into the air to divert the Viet Cong's attention to himself. The enemies spot the American scouts, leading to a firefight. The soldiers leave Erickson in his position and make a tactical retreat. They notice an aircraft and realize that help is on the way, so they need to hold out for a few more minutes. Seizing the opportunity in the chaos, Clark decides to harm the girl and stabs her in the stomach. To his surprise, Owen survives the attack. Witnessing this ongoing horror, Erickson tries to stop his comrades' criminal actions, but the sergeant orders them to finish off the girl. Fearing court-martial, the soldiers reluctantly end her life. The group flees, leaving Erickson behind on the railroad. He witnesses the Allies launching an airstrike on the enemy and notices the girl's disfigured body below. Sometime later, Erickson regains consciousness in a military hospital and confides in Rowan, recounting everything that occurred during the mission. His colleague is appalled by the heinous crime and suggests contacting Lieutenant Riley. Meeting with the commander, Erickson shares the details about the girl, but the man reacts with surprising calmness. He offers to bury the incident that occurred on the battlefield and decides to disband the scout group, assigning its members to different combat units. A bit later, Erickson meets Rowan again and vents his frustration about Lieutenant Riley's stance on the matter. Recruit Cherry keeps interrupting their conversation, but the soldiers manage to send him away. Just a minute later, there's a sudden explosion. It turns out that Cherry accidentally stepped on a mine and tragically lost his life. Overwhelmed with guilt for what happened, Erickson decides not to expose the crime against the Vietnamese girl from the village. After meeting with Captain Hill, he discovers that the entire chain of command is aware of the situation but remains inactive. What's worse, the captain believes that the court won't punish the culprits and that they'll go unpunished. Hill warns Erickson that his comrades will seek revenge, and his wife and daughter will be the first targets. In the middle of the night, Erickson leaves the barracks and heads to the smoking room. Unaware that he's being followed, a drunken Hatcher accidentally exposes Clark, who was trying to eliminate Erickson. Realizing the danger, Hatcher rushes back to the base. Erickson notices Hatcher's strange behavior and, approaching the door, spots a grenade without a pin. With only a split second to react, Erickson jumps out of the building. There's a devastating explosion, but miraculously, Erickson survives unscathed. Recognizing that Clark was behind this and possibly acting on behalf of the sergeant, Erickson takes a shovel and confronts Clark. With a powerful blow to the head, he incapacitates the corporal and admits that he made the incident public, but none of the higher-ups reacted appropriately to the situation. His colleagues can breathe easy because there won't be any consequences for their deeds. Following this, Erickson heads to the nearest bar to drown his sorrows and, if only for a few minutes, escape the horrifying reality of what his comrades did. After a few too many drinks, he encounters Captain Kirk, a chaplain and priest willing to lend a sympathetic ear to the troubled private. Erickson discloses that he's being transferred not because he's a bad soldier, but because he knows too much. He reveals that 4 American soldiers kidnapped a village girl, assaulted her, and ultimately ended her life to conceal their actions. Captain Kirk reports this grave information to the appropriate authorities, triggering an official inquiry. The investigators discover Owen's body, leading to the summoning of those involved for questioning. During the tribunal, all 4 perpetrators face the consequences of their actions. Diaz, who acted under duress, is sentenced to 8 years in prison, Hatcher receives a 15-year sentence, Meserve is handed a 10-year term, and Clark is sentenced to life behind bars. In the present day, Erickson is on a tram when he spots a Vietnamese girl who bears a striking resemblance to Owen. She leaves behind her handkerchief as she exits the transport, and Erickson rushes after her. Soon realizing his mistake, he understands that the horrors of the past days are behind him, and he did everything within his power, and here the movie ends. Thank you for watching.